Good evening, Warband, and welcome back to our Red Pill Cult meeting. Hope you've all got your red robes, sacrificed your goat, and prepared for the sacrificial roast. We've got Sotnar, For No Reason, Random Gen Z Bastard, Hanok Tedesse, just some random guy, and IY fan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I'm sure everyone here is familiar, but a bit of a recap for any new viewers. A while back, Sean of Think Before You Sleep used to consider himself a MGTOW philosopher. Built up his community in the manosphere and all his viewerships by espousing MGTOW talking points and taking from people who, well, were far more invested than he was. He managed to get popular with it. Quite a successful channel. Well over a couple 100,000 subs. And then he realized, MGTOW's holding me back. The algorithm doesn't like it. YouTube doesn't like it. So he hid and deleted all of his old content, and what he didn't delete, he rebranded. And, well, people called him out on it. And he would criticize them for not doing enough research. So that is what we are doing. We are doing the in-depth research. Because even though he deleted all of his old content off of YouTube, it didn't disappear from the internet entirely. Thanks to the efforts of the archives, we have an extensive collection. And so, we're going to be going through one episode at a time while I get progressively more drunk because like hell I'm dealing with this guy sober. Hey, Steve Sanchez, welcome, welcome, and August Lion. Nice, getting you guys pop in. So, hit record here, and we will be in the next segment. And we are continuing our examination of the history of Sean, of Think Before You Sleep. And we are continuing with episode 41, A Complete Lack of Self-Awareness. Yes, that's literally the title of this. Let us begin.
So today I thought I'd give some real-time philosophy, and I thought I'd give you a good example of some of the things I'm talking about, because I was going around my YouTube feed and I saw a perfect example of the lack of self-knowledge, the lack of self-awareness, and projection. And in this particular video, which I will be linking down below, because all the links are always...
Oh, the irony of this, the irony of him criticizing people for a lack of self-awareness and projection. Oh, well, let's see.
Down below. This person is criticizing a model, we'll call her that, named Belle Delphine. Now, if you don't know who that is, you probably have not been on YouTube that much.
Oh, geez, Belle Delphine. She has not been relevant in quite a while. At least a couple years. Like, I'm sure there's still a bunch of fans of hers, but yeah, she kind of dropped off hard.
Much because it seems like every YouTuber and their grandmother is talking about her. But basically, if you don't know who that is, she's a Instagram, Snapchat, Patreon cosplayer who is famous because her cosplays are actually pretty good. But for the most part, I think she's famous for being able to make that like anime hentai face that you'll see in Japanese porn. It seems to be what most people are commenting on, and that seems to be the outstanding.
Hey, Gao, you're telling me that you couldn't spend 5 seconds to look up what the face is called and how to pronounce it? Hey, Gao, jeez.
Feature. Certainly, if you're going to be popular, you do what everybody else does, but you have a little twist, and her little twist is being able to make that weird face. So anyway, I was watching a video of someone criticizing Belle Delphine for, she's extracting money and manipulating you, and yeah, she's doing that. But we have this thing called freedom, so if guys want to spend an exorbitant amount of money on internet thoughts, well, then they're free to do so. I'm not here to stop you. But, well, maybe this girl is, because the more money you spend on Belle Delphine, the less money you have to spend on her Pokemon piano covers or whatever the crap she makes.
And let's be honest, that is true. Like, women don't want men spending money on other women. I find myself coming back to this analogy, but women sleeping with men is the equivalent of men spending money on women. So, do women like men who are free with their money? Well, yeah, sure, but they also don't want men spending money on women who aren't them. So, yeah, it makes sense that a girl's outright criticizing her because, if a guy tried to criticize Belle Delphine for this kind of stuff, he'd probably get the Sid Barbie would come out and start taking him down, or they'd just get banned off whatever platform. But let's see where this goes.
So with that said, let's get right into it.
E-girls and thoughts. We all know the memes around them. Donate buttons, 12-year-old fans, high baby voices.
So I find it ironic that she brings up baby voice as her first attack because she herself has a baby voice, so that is a fantastic projection. Now, if for some...
Oh, right. Sorry, Augustine. I forgot. We got to be listening to this at 1.5 times speed because this will take forever to get through if we have to go through it at normal. Thank you for letting me know. Let's keep going.
One of the things you have to be aware of if you're trying to find your waltz, because the unicorns exist, is who you will not find that in is women with voices that are very, very young. I will give you a couple examples in the description. I'll give you an extreme example. I'll give you kind of like a regular example. And I've listened to many, many years of Loveline, maybe probably about 7, 8, 9 years or so. And one thing they do consistently write about is that when a girl who was 25 had the voice of someone who was 9, there is an extremely high chance that that girl has that voice because she went through abuse. And their theory on that was that, when you get...
So here we actually have the intro of Sean's baby voice theory, which he reiterates quite a bit down the line. Maybe there's something to it, maybe not. Not exactly an expert, but let's just assume that it's true for now.
Sexually molested at 8 years old or 9 years old, your voice gets arrested at that mental state, and you just carry the voice throughout your entire life. And so a baby voice or a childlike voice at an adult age is a red flag as a sign of abuse. What's also ironic is that the person that she's criticizing, Belle Delphine, does not have a baby voice. Here's an example of that.
So this is my wardrobe. This is my jumpers.
So this would be an example of projection. I'm going to take all of my negative traits and point them out in other people because I can't stand to look at myself properly.
Now, funnily enough, I have seen... I think baby voice is interesting because I think that there needs to be a distinction made between baby voice and just a higher pitched voice. Because I know that on some of the VTubers, particularly HoloLive, there's certain VTubers that intentionally pitch their voice up for the purposes of, the performance of their character. And it actually took the popularity of some lower pitched VTuber talent in order to convince them to relax and settle into their deeper, more natural tones. So there is a performance element, a performative element to higher pitched voices, to be sure. But whether or not all higher pitched voices are necessarily baby voices, I don't know. I need to see a more subtle distinction, or at least a more specific distinction between the two. So, brief tangent. Let's keep going.
This is something that's done quite a lot, and if you want to look at this politically, you can see the left doing this all the time. I'm not racist, but all white people are assholes, and they're baby killers, and they're school shooters. It's the same thing.
No, I'm not making this because I'm jealous. No, I do not believe because I am a woman that I should be lifting up other women just because they have a badge. I know it's a meme, but these types of girls do make it hard for others to be taken seriously, and I do have a personal dislike for them. I am biased, I'll be the first to admit. That's why I'm making this video. There are so many wonderful female creators out there. If you guys have any you recommend, please put them down below. Have a great week, guys. I'm not trying to shame at all, but look at these comparisons. You just cannot achieve this without filters or Photoshop. I personally love unfiltered photos. I think the girls are beautiful and should embrace that, but they are not what they're making themselves out to be at all, and that is a problem. They're selling products that are not real, setting up a fantasy that other girls will compare themselves to, and horny guys will buy into.
Okay, yeah, but every woman sells a fantasy. Every woman is always putting out an idealized version of herself that breaks down. It's just... that's the product. They're selling themselves. And they're selling a fake version of themselves, usually because the real version is the kind of thing that makes most dudes run for the hills. So, but not here to roast her, here to roast Sean. But yeah, a bit of a side roast. We got a 2-for-1 special this episode.
Again, I'm not shaming. They can use these filters all they want, but they absolutely know that they are manipulating people with it and are selling something that's not real.
So in this case, we have two perfect examples of her saying one thing, yet doing something that's different, or doing the opposite, let's say in this case. Is that she starts out by saying, I'm not trying to protect the female collective, and then at the end of the video, she tries to protect the female collective. She says things like, well, these thoughts are making it so that we are not taken seriously, and there's all these great female channels, and no. if you're suggesting that Belle Delphine's porn over here is going to affect your Let's Play content, and maybe she's got sort of a case because there are Twitch thoughts or girls who go on Twitch and show their boobs and have a very, very small like Let's Play screen, most of it's on their cleavage, and I'm going to pick this pen off the floor with my ass showing on the camera. No. I mean, yeah, that's content that guys want to watch, which is why they watch it. But if you're so bad at games, if you're so uninteresting that you can't overcome that type of content, well, you're not worth watching in the first place.
There is some merit to that. Like, let's be honest. Like, do I do kind of video game Let's Play content? Yes. Yeah, I have a couple games running on any given week. But at the same time, I am trying to appeal to the audience while also going for myself. But I also know that I have a very specific audience that likes very specific things. Honestly, it's a big part of why I keep doing these. These are super popular. You guys like roasts, so I'm going to jump in and do the roasts. But you always have to find your niche, and you don't want to try to appeal to the majority. So, like, the guys who look at Belle Delphine, no, they're probably not going on the internet looking for some Spyro the Dragon gameplay or whatever. Like, you do have to distinguish yourself. I think one of the most interesting examples is Seth Zintach. Now, I don't think he streams or anything, but he puts out a video and you know that he's going to play a game that you either haven't played in years or is so niche you might never have heard of it. But it's always going to be something interesting, and he's always going to have an interesting way to present it. So, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I can exploit my particular niche here. But at the same time, like, you don't want to go for everybody. Like, if you're complaining that, oh no, like, these Twitch thoughts were basically just sitting in hot tubs in their bikinis doing softcore porn, they're hurting my numbers. Like, are you really competing with the softcore porn market with your Spyro Let's Play? Really? That sounds like you're complaining about all guys. Like, no. Instead, you should probably try to appeal more to the people who are interested in, well, your Spyro gameplay. And let's be honest, there's a lot of people playing Spyro, so you have to have some extra niche to appeal to your specific audience, usually based off your other content. I'm willing to bet that a lot of you guys aren't particularly interested in Elden Ring, but I kept that with 40 some odd episodes and tried to keep it interesting. But that's more so because I wanted to play Elden Ring rather than trying to chase the algorithm. This is not my full-time job. But that's enough of a tangent. Let's keep going.
And the whole premise of this is that she's trying to say that I'm going to be the moral person here. I'm the good guy. I'm trying to help you. So watch me because I'm better than these hoes or better than these thoughts. But all she's done in this case is just show everybody she's a liar, and she's being just as manipulative as the people she's criticizing. And, well, maybe it's my it takes one to know one principle. The reason she knows what these women are doing is because she does those things too. In fact, I watched another one of those videos where she complains about women using guys for money, and then she gives an example of her using a guy for money. So now let's get to the main point of this video. And my goal here is to take something that I think will attract eyes and try to apply philosophy to that. And so we have this person who's being manipulative that's suggesting other people are the ones who are manipulating. By the way, that is the best position to be in. If you're someone who's guilty, the best position to be in is the accuser. But I'll leave you with something useful. And this is something I learned from a voice actor named Crispin Freeman. He has a podcast where he talks about being a voice actor, but he often gives advice that universal.
For those of you who don't know Crispin Freeman, he did Alucard in the English dub of Hellsing. At least that's what I know him best for. So, great voice. Don't know much about him as a person, but he's probably not a terrible person. Maybe.
Applies to basically no matter what field you're in, some of this advice applies. And one of the things he said during his podcast was this idea of projection. Now, projection can be a very destructive trait or it can be a very useful trait. And so if you are a voice actor and you watch another actor act, oftentimes what will happen when you're new is you'll be able to point out all the flaws. That person's not speaking loud enough, they can't read properly, they're not emoting well, and whatever you might point out. Now, he would suggest that there's a reason that you're pointing those specific things out, because in all likelihood, the voice actor you're listening to that's new is making like 50 mistakes, but you've decided to point out 3. There's a reason you picked those 3, and it's likely the case that those 3 things are true about you.
That's actually probably good advice, because if you can point out the flaws in someone else, then this is where recording yourself can be very useful. Any of you guys who've gone to the gym and you've recorded yourself there, you've probably taken notes of all the flaws in your form, and that's allowed you to improve for the next step. Admittedly, I don't listen to enough of my own content, so I probably miss out on a whole lot of growth I could be making here. I'm willing to bet these pauses aren't particularly helpful. But at the same time, no, that's genuinely good advice. Like, pick out what the flaws you find in others are, and there's a bloody good chance that those are the flaws that you will find in yourself, and you can probably make improvements along those lines. Anything that can be used to help you improve yourself is a useful tool. Now, whether you have to make a video online openly criticizing someone else for it, no, that's not particularly necessary, because let's be honest, unless you have an audience that enjoys you tearing someone else apart, it's probably not really conducive to your online entertainment section. But let us continue.
And so you can use these as an identifier. That person's not speaking loud enough. It might be because I don't speak loud enough. And what you can do is one of two things, if not both, is you can use it as a marker to correct yourself. But if you watch that person who can't speak very loud and they overcome the fact they don't speak very loud, then you can just copy exactly what they did. And so you can use projection as a very useful trait. And certainly, because we will automatically project ourselves on other people. This is just something that happens as a force of nature. We project a lot of things onto other things. Like the main reason that stories work, the main reason that mythology works is because I'm going to have this hero story and I project myself onto the hero. I project myself onto the villain and I act out the role and I play out the role. So
honestly, I kind of find that to be a thing where, like, there are people who are, we'd probably call them good people. Like, people who are inherently honest, they always pay their debts, they honor their commitments, and they're probably the easiest people to take advantage of because they cannot imagine someone else not doing what they do. So it's definitely something that can be a weakness where, if you're an honest, upright, and straightforward person, you're probably going to assume that other people are, and that's going to screw you over. I think I've seen some examples, but I forget where the quote came from. It's like, it takes a thief to spot a thief. Or if you want to catch a thief, send a thief. Well, who better to send than someone who knows inside and out? And the people who are going to be most vigilant against thievery, well, they're probably thieves themselves because they're familiar with all the tricks and paranoid about it happening to them. Let's see if we can wrap this up. Only 40 seconds left.
You can use that as a way of identifying all of your negative traits. What are all the bad things you say about other people? And ask yourself, are those things true about me? And I bet you'll find that a lot of those things are true about you. And if they are, correct them. Or if you happen to find someone who has corrected that bad trait about them, ask them what they did or watch what they did and just copy them. It's a very, very simple way to fix yourself. Anyway, so if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new.
Well, at the same time, I would also point out that, like, look, there might be just some flaws that would be too much for you to change. In my case, I'm pretty competitive. And it's like, well, if people want me to be less competitive, I kind of can't. I mean, I might be able to fake it for a little bit, but I'd eventually crack and then slip back into my old habits. So if people can't handle me being competitive, at least I can be honest about who I am and let them decide whether or not they can handle it. Because you do have to be true to yourself rather than constantly trying to change yourself. But it really depends. Is this negative trait about yourself something that is bad for you in general, or just bad for you in specific circumstances? Something to consider. But almost done.
Comment if you have anything else to add in the comment section. Some comments are always appreciated by me. And if you really want to help this channel grow, if you really like it, how about you share the video? That's probably the most helpful thing you do at this point, is let other people know about this content.
I'm pretty sure that this is one of the videos that Sean's deleted, so yeah, liking, sharing, commenting, not going to be happening on his channel, but if you want to make some kind of comment about either something I've said or something he said, yeah, you can do that here, because I'm pretty sure he'll never re-upload the stuff that he's deleted. All right, so that's that segment. Let's see. Comments. Yeah. Hey, guys, quick comparison. What do you think has been the death of more babies? The abortion in the U.S. or the amount of children that Venti swallowed in the past year? Just a ready guy. Is it Sean or Sean? I think it's the second one, Sean. I kind of vaguely remember that, but I don't actually know for sure. So If anyone can like point a link to confirmation, that'd be appreciated. But I just think of it as SEAN. Well, that's why like Venti's clearly using him. Yeah, like, she's using him to get clout because her own relevance is lacking. So she thinks that by going into the, I mean, I guess kind of approaching like, would you call it the manosphere, griftosphere, the borderline right wing stuff anyway. Venti has seen more sausage than a sausage factory. that's quite a bit. There's such a good gif of the nostalgia chick literally taking just a bunch of hot dogs being thrown in her face. Funny thing is, I know the origin to that. It's her review of Freddy Got Fingered. And it's, yeah, that gif did not age well for her. Geez, I don't even know if she's still making content. Venti has rivers from eye to eye. Oh, yeah, she's never gonna live that Sid the Sloth look down. MTC base. Oh, damn! You guys are savage. You guys are savage, but hey, we're all here to roast, so I guess that's one feature that both Manic and I have, is at least your roasts are saved in the chat replay for posterity, and also up here on the the little chat box I keep. I honestly wonder if I should reformat that or expand it. It does feel a little small, especially since these Think Before You Sleep roasts don't particularly have a lot of engaging visuals. Either way, let's move on to the next one. So, starting up the next segment. So, we are continuing our examination into Shaun of Think Before You Sleep, continuing with episode 42. Most new ideas are trash.
The topic today is going to sound like it's set for a specific group of people, but I think this is something that actually universally applies. It's just that more people will be using this idea than others. In fact, it might even be more useful to the people who are not of this personality temperament to listen to things like this, because if you don't use this type of thinking, you probably will not be able to perceive some of the more intricate aspects of it, which is the idea of creativity, or in psychology, you call that IQ, or high IQ plus openness.
What? Okay, sorry, Sean. I may not have a huge amount of post-secondary credentials, but I do actually have... I'm certified in creativity. And no, creativity and IQ are not interchangeable. Creativity is, well, the creation of new ideas, which is largely spawned by the mixing of previous ideas and just accepting, hey, this is a thought that popped into my head. Let's put it down, see if something comes of it. Whereas IQ is far more about pattern recognition. Not necessarily the same things. They might be related. Maybe higher IQs are associated with higher creativity, but I would not call them the same skill set. Let's keep going.
And on that big five scale, you have openness versus, well, openness to experience. I guess the opposite would be closed-mindedness. And well, we have these two different perspectives. And I think what often has happened is that Hollywood, with all the creative types, have said, if you're closed-minded, you must be a bad person. Which, if you have a psychological temperament that a lot of people have, if you have a trait that is kind of naturally inborn in people, you can't let that go. Even if it's something stupid. Like, I think the idea of socialism is completely stupid, but it's really, really popular, so I have to contend with the fact that that idea might have some merit to it, and it turns out it does, because socialism is the expression of all the men who are left out when all the capitalists make all the money, and so if you don't cater to the men who are left out in some way, and I think the way we do that is through sex dolls and AI technology and stuff like that, if you don't cater to those people, they're going to become violent and they will destroy your...
Nah, the way that we used to cater to those people was monogamy, marriage, and a lack of polygamy. He used to be like, hey, instead of letting the top men get all the women, we're just going to let the top men get the top women, and all the women who are not suitable for the top men, those can be the pickings of the men below that. That's how that works. That's how you get men who aren't in the top percentage on board with maintaining society. Like, the AI sex dolls thing, like, no, that's not socialism. Socialism is, well, essentially government control of that kind of stuff. Like, you're not going to get government-funded sex bots, government-funded AI chatbot girlfriends, because the government needs to continually extract resources from men. So they're not going to give tax credits to people. They're not going to give tax credits to men who invent this stuff, nor are they going to fund the programs, because women are a net tax loss. They need men to subsidize the lives of women. Therefore, they need the monogamous marriage system. The sexbot chatbot dynamic, that is very much a capitalist system, and that's really only come about because your average woman has become so insufferable to live with that and is so low value. What is the value of a woman these days? She produces kids. That's it. Like, she is a warm hole to put your meat in, and she can reproduce children. Now, the wormhole thing, that's already had replacements. You don't need chatbots or whatnot to do that. But as for the whole relationship dynamic, nah, they absolutely suck at that. The very fact that freaking algorithms can compete, if not be superior to them in that regard, is proof that they are absolute garbage at the relationship game. So, no. Socialism is not AI and chatbots. Socialism would be if women were mandated to give men positive experiences in exchange for societal engagement. But no, the government doesn't do that because they use women to control men, because even when men are actively being oppressed by women, they still willingly submit to them because, well, quite frankly, a lot of men are very foolish and more in control of their baser instincts and hormones than actual logic. Side rant over. Let us keep going.
Just not, they'll flip the table if they're losing by too much. So you can't just sit and look at an idea like closed-mindedness and say it's all bad, because I think closed-mindedness is actually very, very good. Because here's what happens, is that most new ideas are actually fairly terrible. And if you have a society that only creates new ideas, and you have the very high possibility, because like I said, most new ideas are bad, you could very well think of a fantastic idea that gets completely destroyed by some new idea that's less valid. And so the open-minded people are there to create new things, and we probably need a lot less of those people than we need closed-minded people. The closed-minded people are there to point out, by criticism, which ideas are the best ideas and which ideas...
Okay. Let me give you all a quick crash course on creativity. The actual creative process is a twofold step. The first is the generation of new ideas. This is where you blot out all criticism. Someone, like, you get like a handful of people together, or even just yourself. Any new idea that comes out, you write it down, you put it on a list, you put it on a flashcard, whatever. You write it down, you put it out. And you continually just put out new idea after new idea. No idea is bad at this point. Every single idea is valid. Why? Because the critical part of your brain actually interferes with the creative part of your brain. So the first step that you do is you put out every single idea. If you have a new idea, you put it out. If you see two ideas that you previously made that could be combined, you combine them. You write that down. And you just constantly put stuff out over and over and over until you have squeezed your brain dry of every new idea you or your group or whatever could possibly think of. Then you start criticizing and eliminating everything. And thus you get it down to only the valid ideas. So it's not that, oh, there's open-minded people and there's closed-minded people. Maybe there are, perhaps. I haven't exactly done an extensive study on personality traits. I'm more familiar with introverts versus extroverts. But in the operation of creating new ideas versus rejecting new ideas based on criticism, well, that's two parts of the same creative process. So if you have people that just create new ideas without ever thinking of critical, yeah, they can be kind of useful, but they're not going to create any proper conclusions. You're better off just grabbing all of the ideas that they create regardless, and then actually criticizing them afterwards and ignoring their complaints of, well, you don't like my idea, I'm personally offended, or well, you're just closed-minded. It's like, no, I'm critical and looking at the validity of your ideas. Alternatively, closed-minded people who just refuse to think of new ideas, or every time a new idea comes, they shut down. Like, no, that's not particularly good either. It's like, look, let me get every new idea out first, and then you can criticize and select which ones may or may not be valid. That being said, on top of that, in the modern day, a whole bunch of these new ideas that come out, they're not new ideas. They are someone else's ideas from the past that people are just regurgitating because they're told to. Like, socialism and communism, those aren't new ideas. They're old ideas that failed in execution. But people always seem to think, oh, no, we'll get it right this time because it sounds really good, and I believe in the better nature of humanity. Like, no, humans by and large are self-interested. If you don't create a system that rewards self-interest, then you're going to create a failing system. You have to understand human nature, regardless of what you think the individual might do, because you can't make a system that relies on edge cases. You have to make a system that can work with the lowest common denominator, and that's going to be self-interest. But I've ranted for long enough. Let's keep going and see where Sean's going with this.
Ideas are the worst ideas, and they'll repeat the best ideas by just copying stuff blatantly. In fact, a lot of people just copy stuff, or they'll maintain tradition and culture, because that's how we survive. A lot of our activities, probably most of our activities, are just repeated actions, like brushing your teeth, eating, drinking water, going to sleep, going to school, going to work, hanging out with your friends. These are all repetitious activities. In fact, there may be certain formulas. Like when I have two very close friends, and every time we hang out, either goes, one of three routes. We do this, we do that, we do that. And every so often, we'll try to incorporate a new idea. Like with one friend, I like to play video games a lot. We both like to play video games. We had a lot of trouble because I like classic video games. But when we try to play classic video games, that format doesn't seem to work. Whereas we have a format where we listen to old songs, or we listen to like songs from the 90s, or we have a format that I call eating when we hang out. And these are all formulas that are successful to create a successful hangout with my friend. Whereas other things tend to not work. So we forget the things that don't work, and we keep the things that do work. And again, a lot of it's going to be.
Okay, well, if you're talking about repetitive behaviors, that's a bit different in terms of the brain's psychology. Because to execute a new behavior actually requires more chemical energy in the brain. Something that you are doing for the first time, the brain has a very complex neural pathway that it needs to create in order to do that thing. However, the more you do that action, the more the brain optimizes the route, creates new neurons to make the route simpler, until eventually it becomes such a habit that you can do the thing without thinking. So yes, when you try to integrate a new activity into your friend group hangout sessions, yeah, it's going to be more difficult, and it's probably not going to work out. It's going to be more exhausting. You're probably not going to be able to do it for as long, and you'll probably spend more time trying to deal with all the new dynamics rather than actually just enjoying hanging out. I think that a lot of people fall into destructive habits this way because they're just used to doing stuff that's self-destructive, and doing stuff that's actually, healthy for them is probably just not part of their baseline mental repertoire, let's say. But I don't think that that's a question of open-mindedness versus closed-mindedness. That's just mathematics of mental chemistry. You only have so much willpower to work through in a day. You can only handle so many new ideas. And if you're trying to hang out and relax with somebody, you're not doing that in order to spend a mentally stressful time with other people. You're doing that to chill. You're doing that to relax. So you want to do something that's familiar. You're not trying to go out for a new experience because you're probably exhausted from working all day. But hey, I don't know how exhausted these guys are at the end of the day, so can't say for sure. Let's keep going.
Repetition, and we are psychologically rewarded for repetition. In fact, it may be necessary to our mental health. But when you're trying to find successful patterns to repeat, there's a big problem.
Now, repetition is not necessary for mental health. It's necessary for mental energy retention. Repetition is simple, it's easy, and the brain likes it. It's energy efficient. Whereas trying to do something new every single week, it's exhausting. That's the difference. Less of a mental health thing, but at the same time, I can also see doing patterns of repetition stuff, giving yourself a standardized routine, like, hey, you always meet up at this time period to do these kinds of things with this group of people. Yeah, it's probably nice to have some sort of solid rock to anchor oneself to. That's why, personally, I like the whole 5-day work week. I like working Monday to Friday. You offer me some factory work that is like, yeah, you work like these days and then you don't work these days and you got to schedule everything out over the course of a month and every month is going to be different. No, sorry, I don't like that kind of chaos for my shifts. I like to know that I'm working for these 10 hours, these days, maybe some overtime, and that's it. But who knows? Who knows? I'm not exactly a psychological expert, more of an armchair psychologist. But let's keep going. This is going to be a longer one because I'm probably going to tear a lot of this apart.
Because, like I said, most new ideas are bad. Even people who are very good, who have phenomenal ideas, like, let's say, George Lucas. George Lucas creates this thing called Star Wars, which is a samurais in space, which is a massive, massive success. It spawned 3 movies originally. It spawned a bunch of sequels and prequels and comics and action figures and cartoon shows and stuff like that. I think how many jobs were created because of Star Wars. Phenomenal idea, huge success. And then he creates Indiana Jones. But then you get Howard the Duck, which is a...
Okay, here's the thing. A big part of the reason for the initial success of Star Wars was not just George Lucas shoving ideas out and then people running with them wholesale. That's largely how you got the prequel trilogy. Back when George Lucas was some no-name director and he was creating Star Wars, he had a whole lot of other ideas that were limited by the time. Luke was not originally supposed to be human, from what I've heard at least. George Lucas had a whole bunch of random ideas, including Luke Skywalker being an alien, of all things. There's just a ton of stuff that he had to get told by other people on the crew. No, you can't do that. We can't do that. That's not the greatest thing. That's not what's going to work. We need to keep it simple. So yeah, you had George Lucas as the new idea guy. And he did pump out a bunch of ideas that were good, but he also put out a bunch of ideas that were bad, and they needed to be criticized and reined in so that you actually got the Star Wars experience. The prequel trilogy is George Lucas with, well, significantly less of that filter, because he still had to remain faithful to the old movies. But, well, back with episode 1, he didn't really have anyone who would tell him no. And so what you got was a very poorly paced film, which had way too many climaxes right at the end, one right after the other. But by the time George Lucas actually saw the film altogether and realized that, it was way too late to go back and change it. So that's a huge part of it. Like, you need people to say no as much as you need idea people to propose new ideas. But let's keep going.
Terrible movie. So even people like that can fuck up. And so what you want to do is have some type of way to vet good ideas, vet new ways to, I'm trying to create a new pattern. How can I tell if it's a good new pattern or not? Because you can't just stagnate.
MTNTXII. Star Wars hardly had any saber fighting in the original trilogy. This is true. But that is because it was largely based on old samurai films. Because old samurai fights, and really most fights with katanas, they're not long, extensive, you're going back and forth with swords for several minutes at a time. Most samurai fights were determined in one or two exchanges. Like, most of the film was the build up to the actual exchange, and then the exchange itself was the climax of the entire conflict. So lightsabers are actually far less lethal than katanas in that way, because there's so much back and forth, so many clashes. Like, if you look at actual samurai fights, like, they're decided insanely fast. Fights with katanas, you make basically at most 3 different moves and then it's over, and they're just about as lethal as katanas. Really, there's very little instances of a glancing or non-crippling wound. But that's where a lot of the pacing came from. Much like, think The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the old spaghetti westerns. Like, are there a lot of extensive back and forth gunfights? No. There's a lot of build-up, a lot of pacing, a lot of character development, but then the actual conflict, the actual moment where guns are firing, very limited, very fast, and very definitive results. So the original trilogy not having extended combat sequences makes sense. It's very faithful to the source material. Whereas the, 20, 30 minute multi-lightsaber fight in like episode 3 by comparison, or even the fight between like Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul, yeah, that's very much something that's exclusive to the future fantasy genre and has very little to no part in the original source material, which was, 90 minutes of character build-up or an hour of character build-up in exchange for a couple seconds of actual conflict. So, but either way, I think that if you looked at old samurai films and spaghetti westerns, they followed largely the same format. Maybe some minor conflicts, but once the shots start firing or the swords are drawn, the conflicts end very swiftly. You don't get a lot of these long, drawn-out conflicts that you get from, more modern cinema. But, again, another tangent. We still got about 10 minutes to get through here, so this is going to be one of the longer episodes, I can tell.
The problem with stagnating, the problem with doing things that are only repetitive, is that a new factor could come in and destroy your repetitive actions. So you have to have a mechanism of creating new content. That way, when anomalies show up, you don't get destroyed by them. So there's a way I've been vetting ideas for quite a while, but I've never found a perfect way to articulate it. And I found that in that recent show, because I made a video about this. Someone had recommended it on my Facebook feed. Hey, watch this show by Marie Kondo. She tells people to clean their houses. And for the most part, this is a typical reality TV show. But there's one part of the show that is phenomenal. You can tell it's phenomenal, and you can tell she got this correct because people made shitloads of memes about it. And so when Marie Kondo goes into your house and says, hey, clean your shit, one of the first things she does is say, stack up all your clothes. So husband, stack your clothes. Wife, stack your clothes. Husband will have like 3 pairs of jeans, and the wife will have like clothes that go from the floor to the ceiling. And what she tells you to do, and this is a practice that's repeated throughout the whole cleaning process, you're going to take each piece of clothing and you're going to look at it and say, does this bring me joy or does it not bring me joy? If it brings you joy, you keep it. If it doesn't, you throw it in the trash. Because what you're going to find, if you don't constantly vet things you buy, because you desire for new stuff is infinite, but space is limited. So if you keep buying stuff, but you never get rid of stuff, eventually you're going to hoard stuff, and eventually you're going to have no room for all the crap that you purchased. And so every so often you're going to have to throw stuff away. And the way you decide is you say, do I like this thing? Does it bring me happiness? Do I have this intuitive response to what this thing is? Or do I not? And if I just think it's plain whatever, then I'm going to throw it away. It's the same type of response you have with pieces of artwork. Does this piece of artwork attract me, or do I leave it aside? And if you haven't had that experience, go to your nearest art gallery, whatever type of art you like. It could be anime, it could be realistic stuff, it could be anything else. But go look at different pieces of art and see which ones attract you and see which ones you can leave aside. And you'll get this concept of vetting ideas through emotion, through intuition. Because what I think what happens is that our subconscious is constantly perceiving tons of things that we're not consciously aware of, and it might be better than our conscious awareness in some cases. And so what you do is you humble yourself to that idea, and you say, hey, is this a good idea, subconscious, or is it not a good idea? I'm going to communicate me in some way that is, or communicate me in some way.
Okay, so Sean is essentially saying here that use your emotional intuition as a guidance for your subconscious. I mean, I can see the value of that. Personally, I'd try to use more logic for that. Like, I mean, for example, like, I collect probably way too many plastic miniatures. Like, how many different armies do I need? It's like, well, I really only need one if I'm going to play against other opponents. But what if I want to do test battles against other armies? Well, maybe it'd be handy to have two. So maybe it's worthwhile to invest in two different armies so that I can constantly do test battles and have some asymmetric combat in. So, but that's the thing. But like looking at it and go like, oh, does this bring me happiness? Like, it's one thing to go post-purchase and figure out what you're going to throw out. But you more so have to try to make that decision up front before you actually spend your money in the first place. Because otherwise you're not trying to save money and storage space by not making a purchase that you might impulse buy. You would probably be better off just trying to not make the initial purchase in the first place, because if you buy something and then try to get rid of it or resell it, you're not going to recoup all the value as opposed to if you just hadn't bought it straight out. So, I see where you're getting at, Sean. I think you're flawed in this. Let's keep going.
It's not. And this will be a much more effective, not a perfect way to vet ideas, but a much more effective way of vetting ideas than logically pointing things out. Because that's how other people make decisions. And these ideas are not just for you, they're typically for other people.
No. This is where I'm going to disagree. No. You should not be relying on your feelings to make these kinds of decisions. You should be relying on logic, because if you're constantly chasing your feelings, like, yeah, you might think, oh yeah, this brings me joy in the moment. It gives me that dopamine rush in the moment. Like, there's plenty of times I thought, like, hey, should I go back to this mobile game? And I think, oh yeah, it'd give me a dopamine rush in the moment. It'd bring me joy. But then I think, do I really have the time to commit? Is it actually going to be worthwhile? Am I getting anything useful to trade for the time? Is there something else I'd rather do with the time? I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just hold off on that and allocate my limited budget of time towards things that are going to be more beneficial in the long term and more tangible. So, because like, hey, could I spend 3 hours streaming a roast of Think Before You Sleep? I could. Could I also spend that 3 hours grinding out a gacha game for some digital waifus? Yeah, I could. Which one's going to make me feel better? The gacha waifus probably make me feel good. Which one makes a lot more sense logically to do? Roasting the shit out of an idiot on the internet. So, well, you see this guy on screen, or at least his static image and voice, and not gacha waifus. So that's the choice I made. Let's keep going.
So other people are going to tell you if they're good or not. But ultimately what you're going to do is you're not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. You're going to take already existing concepts and try to mod them just a little bit. Because people who try to change the paradigms and flip the whole thing over and try to invent something that's totally new, those people are very far and few between. And oftentimes they don't really have very many of those things. And so what most of your good ideas are going to be are alterations on what's already there. Like, imagine this. If you've ever sold a house, or you've ever watched somebody sell a house, this is what'll happen. This is maybe, well, it depends on what
you've ever... Sean, who do you think your audience is? If you've ever sold a house, like, okay, there's only two types of people that would sell a house. Either people who've already owned a house, which are probably going to be people at the very least in their 30s, if not their 40s, or real estate agents. Are those the kind of people listening to your content? And I would also ask, what the heck's your experience with selling houses? Sorry, that just struck me as funny. Let's see where he's going with this.
Where you live, but in California, before you sell a house, that house has to be perfect. So what you're going to do is you're going to fix the kitchen sink. You're going to put hardwood floors in. You're going to granite all the countertops. You're going to paint the walls different colors. You're going to make sure there's flowers in the front yard so it looks just absolutely beautiful. Because in California, people are going to pay a minimum in most areas of $500,000 for a house. Even a piece of shit house is going to cost $500,000. And so you want to spruce it up as much as possible so people actually buy it. And so you're going to spend all that work, going from carpet to hardwood floors, going from red walls to white walls, going from a porcelain countertops or porcelain sink to a granite sink. And then when the person buys the house, they're going to come in and they're going to customize it themselves. They're going to say, I don't like hardwood floors. They're too light. I'm going to put carpet over it. I don't like the granite countertops. Water spots showing it too easily. So I'm going to go back to the white porcelain countertops. But all in all, the house is still there. Most of it, 95% of that house, is just the way it was. You still have the four walls. You still have the roof. You still have the electricity. You still have the plumbing. You still have the insulation. You still have, the 3 bedrooms that were in the house. You still have 2 bathrooms. It's the same. except for that little bit of customization. And that's how you make actual good ideas, is you take whatever it is you're looking at and you customize it to your specific talents and your specific preferences. So when I teach yoga for the
Okay, but before we go back into him teaching yoga, I kind of want to take a double check. Okay, so customizing the house to make it look as good as possible, changing out all the countertops, that's a lot of money. Granite countertops cost a lot of money. And then what? Someone's going to drop like $500,000 plus on one of these places, then add more?
Notice the background is his future, a dead bedroom.
Your number's one, Donato. Oh, donated. Thank you. You know what? You're right. I actually never thought about that. Is a fairly lifeless and dead bedroom he's got there. I mean, if you see a pillow arrangement like that, that is a guest room that receives no guests. Oh. Oh, that's a good one. But no, seriously, like, if you're gonna spend like how much? Because you're like renovating your house like that, like is that going to bring you that much more profit? I mean, okay, cleaning the house top to bottom, clearing out a bunch of the signs that it's lived in. Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. But renovating and replacing a whole bunch of customizable stuff, like that costs you money. That costs you money that you're going to have to hope that, oh, hey, customizing this stuff, I better be able to get that much more in the ensuing bidding war. Otherwise, I'm running at a loss here. Like, if you're going to spend 50 grand on renovating your house in order to get an increase of 40 grand on the final sale price, congratulations, you just lost 10 grand. Feels kind of foolish, but he's jumping back into his yoga class anecdote. So let's see where he's going with this.
For you who did not know, and when I created my own yoga class, which I have to get credit to for being extremely unique and extremely creative, even though it's not that creative, is I took a formula that my teacher had made, which
okay, extremely unique, extremely creative. Yes, I think that if I went into a yoga class and then had to listen to my yoga teacher talk about his own personal philosophies at how society should work, yeah, I'd say that's fairly unique. Not necessarily something I'd want, but he apparently got off his old yoga instructor. Okay, what, did your old yoga instructor lecture the class regularly? Let's find out.
he stole from somebody else. And I said, okay, this is the structure of a good class. Do this, 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 and this. And that's how I'll make people like the class. And the only reason I knew this is because I watched people like his class. So I said, hey, this is a successful formula. Let me just copy it. But I can't just copy him, because if I just copy him, people are going to say, well, why would I go to you? I can just go to that guy because he's already better than you. So what I have to do is customize it.
No. No, not necessarily. You just need to provide supply and demand. People, now admittedly, I'm not an expert in yoga class economics. I would think more so construction. So if you want someone to build a house for you, you don't necessarily want to go, oh, well, I want someone who has a unique twist on how they build a house. Like, no. You want someone who does a standardized formula, but the person who's done it prior to you is either A, the demand is so high that they're not available to do the job, or B, their prices are higher. So, like, that is where you break into the niche market, because there's only, like with yoga classes, there's only a limited number of slots in a yoga class. One teacher can only teach so many students at one time. With a trade, only so many projects can be undertaken at one time. The crew is only so large. So supply and demand dictates that you can copy exactly what someone else is actively doing, and if the demand for what that person is doing is high enough, then you will still have an audience without having to do anything unique. You can literally just be an extension of what they do, and if you are either cheaper or available, that's going to be good enough. Don't really think of yoga classes as purely artisanal stuff that you need to have a unique experience with each yoga teacher. That's going to just kind of happen naturally because, hey, people are different. But if you're like, oh no, I need to actively try to introduce some kind of unique twist into my content, or people are going to go somewhere else, like, not really. You don't need to actively introduce it. You just need to do what they do. Like, I'll be honest, if I could be a one-to-one copy of Chronic and produce basically the exact same quality of stuff he does, and basically just be, hey, I'm Chronic 2.0. I do exactly what he does and just as good. There'd still be, like, his audience wants more content. Chronic's audience wants more, and I'd probably find great success in doing that. So, no, finding some unique differentiation does not necessarily mean that you're going to increase your audience. It just means that you're probably going to have a more niche audience than your predecessor. So, I flat out disagree here, but 4 minutes to go. Jeez, this is a long one.
To my own flavor, to my own personal skills, because there are a lot of skills that my teacher has that my teacher doesn't have that I have. And so one of the things I can do that he can't do is I can take every single pose and look at every single alignment cue and break down exactly why that is there. So if we have an alignment cue called don't knock your knee in, I can explain exactly why you should not knock your knee in, when most teachers cannot do that. So a lot of my class is focused on why we specifically do.
Not knock your knee in? Okay, admittedly, I didn't understand that. If people could like comment down below or even in the chat, like what the heck he was talking about, please do. As I'm drawing a complete blank there. That just sounded weird. I didn't really understand it. Let's keep going.
Certain things, and so that might be like one big thing per class. If I did with everything, it'd take forever. And at the same time, one thing that's often left out in yoga is all the philosophies, all the self-improvements, all the religious ideas. And so I add those into the class. And
so his predecessor did not have all this fucking philosophical bullshit, all this, hey, let's introduce the ideas. So here's the thing. If you want to go to Sean's yoga classes, or if you did before he decided YouTube was a full-time job, if you want to go to those, be prepared to get lectured to, because that's his niche. His is a lecture on philosophy and lifestyle as much as it is a yoga class. So, because here's the thing. I mean, I guess that he found that the audience on YouTube was more receptive to his philosophical lectures than his yoga classes were. Because he decided to make lecturing people on YouTube his full-time career rather than lecturing people as they just tried to do yoga.
So before class, I give a speech about fitness, and during class, I might talk about a specific alignment cue and how it applies to all these poses and why we do it. And then at the end of the class, we're kind of just doing relaxation, meditation, where we're stretching, doing things that are essentially easy. Because when people are doing hard work, they tend to not be able to listen to you. And so when things calm down, we do the cool down. That's when I throw in a ton of philosophy and tons of knowledge.
So basically, when people are trying to relax, you jump in and start to preach your own personal philosophy. If people want to be preached to, they'll go to church, unless I guess you consider yoga a religious experience and a religious seminar, which, hey, maybe you found a niche audience for that. Personally, I would not consider going to a yoga class if I wanted to be preached to. But then again, if I wanted to practice yoga, I'd just look up some sort of follow along on the internet and do that rather than wasting my time going down to some sort of public area and having some psycho bitch scream at me for a couple hours, which, yes, I've seen some yoga classes locally, and yeah, they're loud. Far louder than I'd want. But that's a side tangent. Let's... God, 3 minutes. God, 3 minutes. We're almost done.
Like what I do in YouTube videos. And so that's been a very, very popular format, but I didn't reinvent the wheel. I just said, here's what I'm capable of, here's what I can add that's not already there, and this is how I've customized my idea. And ultimately what's going to happen is that you're going to subject this to criticism, is you're going to subject this to other people, because other people will say, hey, this is a fantastic idea, or hey, this is a terrible idea. And I know a lot of people, this was in school a lot, so you might experience this if you ever had a writing class, which if you've been through American schools, you have, is you'll write a paper, and they'll have it peer reviewed. They'll have your friends grade it. Nobody ever wants to show their paper to their friends. Well, the ones I always never cared, because I was always fairly good at writing. And so I would, here's my paper, read it, don't give a shit. Tons of people were like, no, don't read it. I don't want you to see this. And oftentimes it's because you know the idea is bad. You don't want the criticism. And so, well, you're not going to show the idea. But for you, even if your ideas suck, you're not going to know they suck unless you present them to other people. In fact, this is why therapy is effective. Therapy, the idea behind this is not the person sitting there across the room telling you what to do, is you you're going to say your ideas, and you're going to have them. You're going to have another person experience them, and they could just say nothing. But just the fact that another person is there will make you reconsider your message. So you might say, "Oh, I had this really fantastic idea, and I'm going to tell it to my therapist." And as you're speaking to the therapist, without them even responding, you say, "Well, hey, this kind of sounds insane." And so what the therapist is there to do, even if they don't say anything, they're there to listen and they're there to be present while you say things. That way,
I mean, this is kind of why, like, if you're going to type a comment on the internet, you should probably read it out loud to yourself first, and then that will help you realize whether or not it sounds stupid. Because, okay, yeah, like getting yourself out there, presenting it as though someone else is actually going to see it, getting it outside of your own head into more objective format, yes, that's beneficial for determining its true value. As for therapy, it's like, oh god, if you gotta pay people to listen to that kind of stuff, like, okay, first of all, before you drop like 3-4 figures on paying someone else to listen to your bullshit, how about you pull a Castaway and just draw a face on a volleyball and try talking to that? Actually, there's a similar concept in programming called the rubber duck, where you have a rubber duck sitting on your desk, and whenever you run into a problem with your code, you talk to the rubber duck as though it's an actual person, and you walk it through your code step by step. And in doing so, you're probably going to realize the flaw in your code, in which case you grab the rubber duck and throw it across the room. Hence why you do it with a rubber duck and not a porcelain cat or some other thing. But come on, let's wrap this up. I need to get some more ice.
you can determine if you have good ideas or bad ideas, ideas that work that can be repeated, or ideas that should not be repeated, ideas that should be nipped off. So like I said, I think this applies universally, even if you're not creative, because if you're going to be well-rounded, if you're going to be balanced properly, if you're someone who's very closed, you're going to have to be at least a little bit open. Otherwise, you become ineffective. You become so closed-minded that you'll never get rid of anything. And, well, psychosis comes out from that.
No, that's the thing. If you are only repetitive or you only follow orders, guess what? You will still be highly effective in society. If you go to a trade job and you just listen to what your superiors tell you and follow along with their steps, step by step, and you don't try to add your own twists or your own ideas, you can be highly effective. Like, you can absolutely find success by being a completely unoriginal, non-creative person. It works. It 100% works. Like, again, I work in the trades. I don't go in there and think, oh, I'm going to revolutionize this. I'm going to find different ways. Like, nah. The way this was done was discovered through literal decades of having to do the exact same thing over and over again, optimizing the process and minimizing stress. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel with each new person. Sometimes you just need to go with how things are and not worry about being creative or new, and save that for your own personal endeavors and struggles, because you don't need to be creative to be successful. Sometimes you just need to be able to follow orders, and trying to be a special snowflake who reinvents the wheel is only going to screw you over by having you try to think up new ideas that have already been tested and rejected because they sucked. Let's try to wrap this up.
So even if you're someone who's not creative, you can still use this stuff. You can still say, is this a good idea? Does it please my intuition? Does it please my subconscious? Or does it not do that? And you can vet things that way. You can vet things through criticism. You can vet things through, or you can have a higher likelihood of doing things that are new by just taking a thing that already exists and modding it to your own experience, or modding it to what your friends like or what you like, or based on what your own capabilities are. And, well, that's how you do that. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, comment if you'd like to add to the discussion. That's always appreciated on my end. And if you want to...
I'm pretty sure that this was deleted from his channel. I haven't exactly looked through his archive to see, but chances are you can't like or comment the original video. So if I've missed something, or you have some sort of critical idea of me, comment that down below. If you like it, like, and if you subscribe, well, keep an eye on the subscribe, because apparently my subscribers get removed every couple days. So yeah, might happen to you. Either way, that's been this episode. See you in the next one. That one was 42 minutes. Oh, that one was long. That was That was way longer than I would have liked. Alright, how's chat been doing? Try not to respond to the chat too much during the actual video unless you got something relevant to the topic at hand. Hey Yeet, welcome. Random guy, I hate how he values feelings so much for decisions. Yeah. Well, again, the guy, he's not exactly a bastion of stoicism or testosterone. Despite him, supposedly gearing his channel towards guys, it does feel like a lot of his advice is aimed at women, but hey, the dude is accustomed to teaching yoga classes. Do you think that more guys or girls go to yoga classes? I'm willing to bet it is a primary female audience. So I'm sure that he learned to cater his thoughts and philosophies towards feelings via his yoga classes, whereas on YouTube, it's not really going to resonate that well with the more masculine of his male audience. But, if you're going to a whole lot of fat dudes who are producing an excess of estrogen, then hey, maybe appealing to their emotions works. Because there's a lot of guys who are being programmed these days to think like women. Yeah, overwhelmingly female, Gen Z bastard. I'm going to grab some more ice. I'm hoping to get through 2 more of these. We're making good time. So I think we'll be able to take care of it. I shall be back momentarily, gentlemen. Just going to hit the intermission. And we are back. I hope I didn't lose too many of you during the intermission. I want to see Sean versus Taoism. Yeah, you'll just be seeing some freaking lightweight getting punched and knocked back 50 feet by a dude with arms that are super stretchy. So won't be much of a fight, but probably amusing to hit that same scene on replay a couple dozen times. I forgot you left. I mean, ouch, but hey, so long as y'all are still somewhat entertained. We've been hovering around like the 18 to 20 mark. I think it peaked around like 25 or so. So I guess some people are dropping in. So who knows? Maybe I'm actually reaching new people in the algorithm. They're probably not Warband regulars since I don't see them commenting or sticking around for very long. But let us continue. So, We are continuing our examination of Sean of Think Before You Sleep's history with episode 43, Criticizing Women on Facebook is Hate Speech. Ooh.
So I got a little optimistic this week because of one of the latest Joe Rogan episodes with Jack Dorsey and Tim Pool and the other chick who has a very unpronounceable name. You can go look her up from the episode. But as far as the stuff that I watched, I think that went fairly well. Just the fact that you would have one of these people debate someone who disagrees with them is actually a pretty big step, even if nothing gets done in this case, because so many of these people on the left, or some of these people that are in positions of power that have leftist views, never debate anybody. Like, when was the last time Alexander Ocasio-Cortez debated anybody on the right? What about Anita Sarkeesian? She is active.
Okay, let's just break down this bit of debate. There is no need to debate somebody if you have a monopoly on the power. You only need to hold a public debate. Not if you need to convince the other person. You will not convince the other person. The objective during a debate is to convince the audience. You're trying to get the support of the people by presenting your ideas. But if you're part of the government, if your state is so firmly entrenched in your political party that it is impossible for you to lose, who cares? You don't need to debate. You don't need to justify your ideas because you don't need the consent of the people to have power. You are just going to win. Why waste time and energy on a debate? Now, something like Joe Rogan, well, for him, the debate is the content. Having people argue with each other is the content. Right here, even, the roast is the content. Like, if I just unilaterally agree, like, if I pulled up something like Hammerhand's content here, and I basically spent 20 to 40 minutes just agreeing with everything that he said, that'd be boring. It'd be boring and pointless. Not content worth consuming. People may as well just watch Hammerhand without having me shove in my additional commentary. There's only value in it if there is some kind of disagreement or if it's the presentation of different ideas. That's why Joe Rogan is a pretty decent host, because he's just trying to get his guest to present their ideas rather than just constantly trying to insert his own opinion. Mostly because he tries to get people on whose opinions aren't well known, but that makes things like Tim Pool or Jordan Peterson all the more useless. I mean, Tim Pool's ideas are just going to be whatever the heck is most acceptable to both sides in the mainstream, being milquetoast and lukewarm. But we're not here to roast Tim Pool, we're here to roast Sean. So let's see where he's going with this.
Avoid debates because these people know that if they ever have any sort of conflict, the other person will destroy them in the debates. So the fact that Jack Dorsey was willing to go back on the Joe Rogan podcast, like a month later, after people had heavily criticized it, so it was immediate, and he was willing to put somebody else on who would actively criticize him, which I didn't think Joe Rogan would actually do.
Wait, okay, Jack Dorsey, that's the guy who used to own Twitter, right? Before Elon Musk bought it? Yeah, like, it gets supposedly X now, but yeah, I think Jack Dorsey was the guy who owned Twitter, and he kept getting dragged for all the pro-leftist, anti-free speech stuff. So yeah, makes sense that he'd have to go back on because it's a PR move for him. Like, he needs to appeal to the largest number of people possible, because if no one uses Twitter, Twitter dies.
So that was all fairly positive. And the stuff that I heard about it, the hour of it that I listened to, seemed pretty okay. But unfortunately, this just seems to be the case for Twitter. Now, of course, Twitter is not an innocent bystander. This Twitter has done some pretty terrible things. But at least it seems to be that they're trying to move away from that kind of content. But the other websites are not doing that currently. We've just passed that whole Patreon Sargon thing, where Patreon not only banned Sargon, but they doubled down on the banning and maintained their line. In fact, said, hey, if you don't like that, get off of Patreon. We don't care about you. Bad move, by the way. They lost a ton of their business from saying things like that. So that's fortunate.
Yeah, well, they're still around, so apparently there's enough people that are willing to accept the convenience of Patreon over the requirement for censorship. Speaking of, if you want to donate to this channel, I am posting the link to my Streamlabs link. Streamlabs link in the description right now. I will pin it as soon as this bloody icon gets out of the way. And yeah, if you want some TTS, you can do that. But, it's not mandatory or anything. I make my actual money elsewhere. This is just a moderately expensive hobby. I have a far more expensive hobby, so in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. But let's keep going.
More recently, in my personal life, I've been censored on Facebook about 3 major times, if not more. I think at least 3 times in the past 6 months for stuff I believe I would have gotten away with. I think I've gotten away with a lot of this stuff before in the past. So Facebook is gradually getting less and less free. They're getting more towards the hate speech line.
Whether or not you get censored on Facebook or any other social media platform largely depends on whether or not somebody with an axe to grind actually sees what you're posting. Because this content right here, should it be like more heavily censored on YouTube? I'm pretty sure that people have been like kicked off of YouTube for stuff like this, but well, I'm not exactly pulling in massive numbers, so it hasn't gotten the attention that warrants a banning or even a demonetization. So, yeah.
And it's crazy because I posted 2 memes in the past 3 months or so. And there's one I commented on a meme. Actually, this might even be a time period that's less than 6 months. It might be a time period that's like 4 months or so that Facebook has been attacking me for hate speech because, well, I posted 2 PewDiePie memes. And there's one PewDiePie meme that I thought was hilarious, which I'll throw it up on screen right now, is a meme of basically Vox calling PewDiePie Hitler. And I guess that the person who reported this, or maybe it's an algorithm, or I don't know, did not get the joke. But it's clearly not saying that you should go date Hitler. It's a joke, and I got this meme from PewDiePie's channel, which he posted a video that's still up. I imagine. I can't remember what video it was, but it was up for quite a while when I got the meme. And it was just a popular post that was on Reddit, so it's fine with Reddit. It's fine with YouTube. Facebook, terrible hate speech. You should be banned for it, and whatever terrible things we can do to you.
I'll admit, I don't get it. I guess they're calling PewDiePie Hitler. Like, why can't I find a guy like this? PewDiePie Hitler says, okay, I guess. I mean, I guess there's just more proof that like the left can't meme or whatever, but oh God, that's just whatever. Like it's not funny, it's not effective. So it's a terrible meme. Let's keep going. So but I guess Sean thought that was hilarious. Whereas I think that's weak sauce, but whatever.
Second one, this happened a day ago or so. I got another block on Facebook for 3 days from posting another meme that was on PewDiePie's channel. No problem on YouTube. Suddenly, this is a massive detriment. By the way, well, let me just show you the clip to prove that this is perfectly acceptable on YouTube.
Female, woman, human, person, what's her?
Dishwasher. It's very lame. Next one.
There it is. It was a joke at women's expense about dishwashers, and now it's identified as terrible hate speech. You're an awful person for saying it, and you can't say it on Facebook anymore. If you do it again.
Yeah, again, like that's more a matter of like this triggered somebody who either sent the report, and then that report probably got to some sort of female HR person or simp in Facebook, and then they were like, oh yeah, let's take this post down because it's offending people. And here's the thing. Facebook needs a female audience. Why? Because women share news at a greater rate than men. They will. Like, statistically proven, women tend to share news more than men. Women probably have significantly more engagement on Facebook than men. They spend more time on Facebook than men. Therefore, you don't want anything on Facebook that makes your core audience, i.e. women, upset or want to leave Facebook. Ergo, Facebook is going to remove everything offensive to women because women are their primary audience. That's just how that's going to work. Is it fair? No, but life's not fair, so improvise, adapt, overcome.
Again, we'll ban you from the whole website. Ridiculous. And in the last case, I'm going to blank this person's face out because I don't know if she's a public figure or not, but somebody, I do some video game or some classic video game forums on Facebook, and somebody posted this picture.
Okay, Kirby Air Ride, honestly, I had a crap ton of fun with that game when I was younger. You just pick out open free roam, and you just, you do multiplayer. You head to the city, open free roam and you invent Kirby Golf, where there's an actual golf course. One person plays the the ball, and the other person hits them with vehicles as hard as they can to try to actually knock them into the holes. It's hilarious seeing someone fly across the screen after getting just nailed by the Hydra. But beside the point, either way, Kirby Air Ride, that was very fun game for the GameCube. So, personal recommendation, but that was a bygone era.
With a copy of Kirby and was like advertising to sell the game. I actually don't think this is an actual sale, but the person was hey, want to buy this, even though he wasn't selling it. He just wanted to show the picture of this thought with a copy of Kirby's Air Ride. And I mentioned in the comments, I said, hey, if I buy this, do I get the thought with it? Because you see this every so often. You'll look on eBay and there'll be like a picture of a classic video game, but like a chick in underwear is holding it. And so, well, if you're using sexuality to sell a video game, well, then you're a thought. And I'm just pointing out things that are true. But I don't really get this, because if you look at what women say on Facebook, there are so many memes on Facebook that women post that belittle men.
Again, Sean, women are the primary audience, consumers, and providers of content for Facebook. Ergo, Facebook is going to appeal primarily to women. Social media as a whole is primarily the domain of women because women have the free time and the desire for social engagement. That's how that works. It's basically a massive freelance marketing department that pays in social clout instead of actual money. So that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a platform or publisher or whatever the heck you want to call it that primarily appeals towards the female audience and does their best to keep that female audience happy, or at the very least continually using the website.
Tons of them, all the fucking time. Do their comments ever get banned? No. Do they ever get blocked from Facebook? No. So why the fuck is it the case that if you post anything that's sort of bad about women, by the way, that...
Good job holding down the Fort Grape Ghost.
Oh, geez, I'll sue you for defamation for that, but thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. But yeah, but also, like, random dingy bastard. Like, how dudes are the primary audience of gacha games? Exactly! Like, it would be weird if you had gacha games all of a sudden posting a bunch of thirst traps for women, like a whole bunch of BL content or a bunch of, like, shirtless attractive dudes. Like, no. Like, the people who primarily play the gacha games, they're guys. What are you going to do? You're going to post a whole bunch of cute waifus that feel a whole bunch of different niches. That's how that works. Social media, you're going to primarily appeal to the female sensibility, and you're going to get rid of anything that says otherwise. Now, that being said, this is why I'm very much against the whole, I think it's Section 201, that gives all these platforms, quote unquote, government protection from the content, because if they're going to arbitrarily or specifically select what content is or is not acceptable, then so far as I'm concerned, they are not a platform, they are a publisher. And therefore, if any illicit content is posted and they do not remove it, then they should be held accountable. Because if they're going to go to the effort to remove offensive content, then they should be able to dedicate that same amount of effort to remove illicit content or illegal content. And if they're going to prioritize banning offensive content over illegal or illicit content, then yeah, they deserve to get sued for all the bullshit and should not have the government protections of Section 201. But that is an American legal issue, and I'm Canadian, so my involvement is little to none because our government handles social media like complete idiots. Let's keep going.
That post about dishwashers, let's see, no, so I was going to say three. At least two women that I looked at on the likes before it got deleted, at least two women liked that post. They didn't think it was offensive. They didn't think it was hate speech. So why did my account have to get suspended for that? When I'm sure that all these women who are constantly posting about how men aren't shit, men are stupid, men can't do anything right, tons of memes about that, I'm sure they are not getting blocked or banned for that stuff. Complete double standard. And the double standard is a problem because when you start taking away free speech, when you take away speech in general, when you take away verbal communication, the only other answer is violence if you have any sort of disagreement. I mean, look at like dogs. If you have a dog that wants a toy and another dog wants that very same toy, they don't like talk it out and say, oh, you can have this toy for 15 minutes and I'll have it for 15 minutes. They don't, or I'll share this toy if you share with me with that toy. They don't do that. They don't have the ability of speech. So if they both of them want the toy at the same time, they fight and the stronger dog gets it. So if that's what they want us to revert to, this is, dogs just have their claw.
Okay, well, look, let's be honest here. Everything eventually comes down for violence. If you want something that someone else has and they are not willing to hand it over to you, what is the difference? Well, you can attempt to acquire it via violence, sure, but there's a high chance that you are going to suffer retribution from the police, an even higher degree of violence. Everything is ultimately controlled by violence. That's why there's this appeal to authority. And if you're like, oh, well, Facebook's not going to let me talk, it's like, okay, well, Facebook has the monopoly on violence. What are you going to do? Well, social media is going to lead to other violence. Are you saying that you will commit violence against people who do not allow you speech? Because I'm willing to bet that you're not going to go to Facebook. You're not going to deal with the Facebook security, CEOs, HR department. You're not going to bother with them. This freedom of discussion stuff to prevent violence, it just rings extremely hollow to me. Especially from you, Sean. I mean, like, let's be honest. You're not exactly the greatest specimen of physical fitness. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's more than a few girls that could beat the crap out of you. I don't know how many, because I assume you have some testosterone. But the yoga instructors does not exactly strike me as someone who can take someone else in a fight. So, like, this idea that, oh, if you don't allow us to freely talk on social media, that's going to lead to war. No, it's just going to lead to less people engaging on social media. Like, the world's problems are not getting solved by people exchanging ideas on social media. Like, I need to see some actual numbers to believe that that is remotely a thing. But I'm going off on another tangent. Let us continue.
And teeth. When we have nuclear weapons, we've got guns, we have, well, tons of different airplanes and tanks.
Are you seriously implying that if we don't get to have freedom of speech on Facebook, we are going to resort to nuclear warfare? Holy crap. Really? Really? The consequence of not being able to share spicy memes on Facebook is going to be nuclear war. Okay. Whatever. Let's keep going. Jesus.
Stuff like that. Tons of different modalities to create extreme amounts of destruction. So this isn't really the best idea to be sitting here limiting free speech. The only place where you are allowed to limit free speech is in cases where someone's...
Okay, but... I mean, that's to do with their Section 201. Freedom of speech is specifically that the government is not supposed to be able to persecute you for speaking your opinion. The Facebook, as much as it might claim to be a public space, it is still a private institution that makes a lot of its money off of data collection and ad revenue. It is still technically a private company. It is not a public square. And here's the thing. Sean, let's have a little bit of a test if you think that freedom of speech is a thing. Take these spicy memes, go into the public central square of a city, and hold them up like you're Steven Crowder or some shit, and see how far free speech gets you. Guess what? The cops might not arrest you or jail you or imprison you or whatever for holding that up. But do you think you won't get in shit from the average passerby? Good luck.
calling for violence. Hey, go kill yourself, or let's go murder this person, or let's go blow up this store. Anytime someone calls an action for violence, that's when you get to stop free speech. Anything else, like,
Okay, yeah, but that's Section 201. Section 201 means that Facebook and various other social media platforms are not accountable for the kind of crap posted on their channels. Therefore, they can allow for that kind of harassment to go, and they are not legally liable. So it sounds more like you have an issue with things like Section 201. But that's the thing. If you're going to say that, well, no, you shouldn't be able to tell somebody to kill yourself, okay, well, then you're against free speech. Because telling someone to go remove themselves from this mortal coil in Minecraft is not free speech, well, then you're against free speech. Free speech does not come with an asterisk. Free speech is free speech. You either believe in it or you don't. If you're like, well, I believe in free speech, but then no, you don't believe in free speech. You believe that you should be allowed to say whatever the heck you want and that anyone else should not. And given that I'm pretty sure that you have pulled freaking report things and you've sent people after content creators who've criticized you, yeah, you are very much the rules for thee but not for me field of free speech. So screw you. Let's keep going.
name calling, angry comments, arguments, political discourse, jokes. It's ridiculous that they're trying to limit these, because that's, well, not only ridiculous, that's fascistic. Anybody who,
And let's be honest, that is very much the essence of these free speech people. They want to be able to post whatever the heck they want. They want to be able to say whatever the heck they want. But people who are against them, no, they will absolutely use the system in order to tear those people down. And no, fascism is the alliance or compulsion of government and private enterprise. So that is more so limiting speech according to the whims of the government being imposed on private enterprise. I'm pretty sure that a lot of what Facebook did, at least at this point, was just them looking after their own ass, not necessarily government imposing. So it's not fascistic. Now, nowadays, we know that Facebook has had interference by the government, which is fascistic, but you telling a meme about women that upset them, nah, that's just Facebook looking at their bottom line and realizing that they need to keep their female audience if they want to remain solvent.
complains about fascism and says, if you disagree with me, you don't get to speak, you're a fascist. And this is another one of those cases where we need to start calling things what they are. Start calling things by their actual name, and people might start realizing, hey, I'm actually being the person that I hate. Because you can't get rid of conversation, you can't get rid of speech, and you have to be able to speak freely outside of limitations of violence, because we think by speaking. One of the ways we reason and we kind of make things intelligible is by explaining them to other people. In fact, if you look at therapy, that's exactly what you're doing in therapy. Like, a lot of people have this notion.
Back to the whole therapy thing. It's like, look, just draw a freaking happy face on a piece of paper and talk to that. I guarantee you that's probably going to be about as effective as therapy is. If you just need to talk to some sort of human analog that is not responsive, that will be enough. Just put a freaking happy face to fool your brain into thinking that you're talking to a real human being and speak to an inanimate object. I'm pretty sure I could speak to one of these tiny freaking aliens that I paint right here, and it'd probably be just as effective as paying a couple $100 to have some freaking bored-ass woman listen to my problems.
That when you go to a therapist, you just talk about your problems, and they say, okay, the therapist says, okay, you have this problem, do this, do this, do this, and do that. That's not what you're doing in therapy. In therapy, you are figuring out a mechanism to solve your own problems, because they say do this, this, and this. The second you have the next problem, you have to come right back to them and say, hey, solve this problem for me. And, well, doing that's going to be very inefficient, because maybe you only see your therapist once a week, so you have to wait a whole week for the problem to be solved for you. When a lot of these problems...
Again, literally, just... I mean, honestly, the whole get a doll thing kind of reeks here, but, like, literally, just get a doll, get a miniature, draw a happy face, talk to a chat bot, for sakes. Print out an image of your waifu and talk to that as though it's real. Like, again, second time I've referenced Castaway in one of these at least, but if a bloody handprint with a smiley face on a volleyball is good enough for Tom Hanks, it's good enough for you. Just, I mean, make somebody up to talk to if you can't find a real human being to listen to your problems. And if you need to just vent all your bullshit in order to solve the problems of your life, well, congratulations, you're probably a woman. But come on, guys, like, just deal with your shit. I mean, I can't say I can speak for all guys, but this just seems like a problem that has a far easier solution than dropping a crap ton of money to freaking pay someone's student loans when they're probably not even mentally qualified to deal with your shit.
Problems need to be solved immediately. They need to be solved instantly. And so you have to have some type of reasoning mechanism to do that. And the way you develop that is through lots of work. Because if you don't have these mechanisms, it's going to take a while.
Random Gency Bastard, I got waifu figurines. Are those acceptable substitutes? Yes. It's got a human face. It's got a human pose. Set that up on your desk in front of you and literally just talk all your problems out to it. I guarantee you'll probably solve at least a couple of them. Explaining your problems to an inanimate object objectively does help you solve those problems. So, yes, anime waifu figurines, 100%. I'd consider those a legitimate substitute for a therapist.
But the way you develop that is by speaking out your thoughts in front of somebody else and presenting them in a way that they can understand them. Because one of the things that will happen when you present your thoughts to somebody else is that they don't know everything that you know. They don't know you as well as you know you. They don't have the background knowledge. They don't have all the same experiences. So what you're going to have to do.
Well, this is actually something that I learned many, many years ago. That if you want to learn how to do something with 100% effectiveness, you need to teach somebody else. So creating some kind of human analog to explain something to does actually help you get a better grasp on the subject at hand. So again, little figurines, anime waifus, whatever the heck you have, if you are actively trying to explain what you are trying to deal with to that subject, you will find an objective improvement in your own ability to deal with it, in your own understanding of it. That's just how things work. So you don't need to pay a real life human, flesh and blood human to do it. But oh god, let's try to wrap this up. I have had far too much alcohol. Really, it's a delicate balance. I can't do these sober, but there's only so many I can do intoxicated.
Do is simplify, find all the most important points, and articulate what you're saying from a different angle that somebody else understands, which might encourage you to see something that you thought of from a different angle, which will.
Nah, but like Gabriel, 100%. Like that's the thing. Like, yeah, you won't be able to talk about your most serious problems in public or with a real life human. This is where some kind of analog can actually help. Like maybe it's an image on a screen, maybe it's a 3D figurine, whatever it is, just find some kind of analog to talk to, and it'll probably help you work through your problems rather than just trying to bounce them around in your own head. Articulating stuff helps you understand it. That's just how things work.
Broaden your perspective, and it might broaden your perspective just enough for you to be able to figure out what the hell the problem is that you're having. You're saying, I have this problem. Your therapist or the other person experiencing your problem says, I have no idea what you mean by that. Can you explain it in a different way? Okay, well, how about this? Oh, now I get you. And then you say, oh, hey, I never thought of it that way. Now I say it like that. The problem is not here. It's actually this thing over here. Let me go look at this, and now I can solve the problem. When you articulate things to other people, you have to articulate them in a way that they can understand it, and that helps you understand the thing better. That's what people are doing when they talk. And then the second benefit of doing that is, which is more so the reason why you can't limit free speech, is because if you're going to have a better idea, you have to open yourself up to criticism. And so let's use the therapy example again. Your therapist is saying, well, you explain this. I don't really get that. See, you said this is the case, but what about that right over there? What about this? There's this big problem with what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense. And you might say, well, no, I disagree with you. This is what you're focusing on this when actually it's this right over here that's right about this. And your therapist might say, okay, well, that makes sense now. Or they might.
The difference is a therapist is paid to listen to your bullshit and respond to it as though it's completely valid. Random people on the internet, they are not paid to listen to your bullshit. So they can just block you and ignore you. They don't have to actually deal with your insanity. And let's be honest, if you don't pay into a therapist, are you even going to consider what they have to say valid, or are you just going to dismiss whatever they say as some rando on the internet disagrees with me? Oh, they must be a hater. I'm still right. They're still wrong.
You're completely right. There might be a flaw in your logic, or there might be just something that you said that just sounds absolutely nuts, and they say, hey, that sounds nuts. But if we're so afraid of criticism, especially the people who would throw out the critiques for fear of, being thrown in jail or being banned off of major social media platforms that disconnect you from most of society, then you don't get that benefit. You don't get the benefit of seeing your ideas from different angles. And this is one of the things that I thought that really impressed me about what Jack Dorsey said on that Joe Rogan podcast, is they said, I don't know if this is actually a thing right now, but they said what they're doing is they're working towards an algorithm that constantly puts up opinions that you would disagree with. I think that would be a fantastic idea.
No. I think that from a social media standpoint, that'd be a terrible idea. If you are constantly putting up opinions that you disagree with, people are far more likely to just leave your platform. I mean, maybe it would be good for the benefit of society as a whole. Okay, perhaps. I think that eliminating social media would do a hell of a lot more, because then you'd actually you'd have to be forced to interact with the people who are in your local area and therefore actually have some sort of effect on your lives. But if you're constantly trying to put up opinions of people that you disagree with, all you're doing is fostering arguments, which, okay, maybe that introduces more clicks. Maybe that makes people argue more and add more content to your website. But there's also going to be some people who go like, you know what? Every time I open this, I just see a bunch of shit that I disagree with. Screw it. I'm going to leave. I'm going to close this. I'm going to delete my account. I'm going to delete the app. I'm not going to bother with this anymore. And oh, hey, guess what? My life is so much less stressful now that I deleted all this crap that was messing with my psychology. I feel so much better. I'm not going to go back, and then bam, your social media site has just lost another user.
Because, well, I don't think a lot of people are used to that. Now, me personally, I quite a lot look at opinions I don't agree with. I quite a lot look at things like the Young Turks. I will read a bunch of different socialist propaganda. I will interact with people who have different ideas, because I want to know how they think, because if I know how they think, I can better learn how I think, and I can certainly better learn their arguments and why they have them in the first place, because a lot of times these people who disagree with you have a point, or even if they don't have a point, they're a part of what they said might be true, might bring some light upon why they thought that in the first place, and that allows you to broaden your perspective. So you have to be allowed to criticize, you have to be allowed to be angry, you have to be.
I mean, Gabriel, like, if you have a friend you can trust to figure things out, solutions to your problems, like, yes. Yes. Like, if you have a real life friend who you trust enough to give you proper good advice, then yes, that is significantly better than using some sort of inanimate 3D object as a human analog. But, not everyone has that. And quite frankly, if you call up your friend and just vent to them all the problems in your life and hope that they'll give you a solution, that's probably a really good way to lose a friend. So your mileage may vary with that.
Allowed to name call, you have to be allowed to be funny, allowed to be able to post memes and make jokes, because if we don't get any of this, people are not going to think effectively. We get echo chambers, we get fascism, and we get a less effective society. Not less effective society, we'll effectively get a collapse. Because like I said, the disagreements are still there. Nothing stopped them from happening. We have a mechanism to keep our disagreements at bay, which is called conversation. But if you take that away, the problem's still there, and it's going to get solved, whether you would like it or not. And
you can still talk to people in real life. Social media is not real life. You don't need to talk with strangers on the internet to have people have a conversation with you and exchange your ideas. Like, people exchanged ideas prior to the invention of Facebook. I know, amazing concept to think about. But you could always, talk to a real human being if you need someone else to actually bounce your ideas off of.
if you take away speech, it gets solved by violence. So the fact that Facebook is sitting there doing this, calling innocuous things hate speech, like saying that women are related to dishwashers, when women do shit like that all the time on Facebook, like, it's ridiculous that I got suspended for posting that meme. The problem is not just this. The problem is that it's going to get worse, because right now they're just boiling the frog. Of course, if you haven't heard this before, this is very commonly known, so sorry if you've heard it. But, if you take a frog and put it in a pot of boiling water, the frog is just going to jump out. But if you put it in a cold pot of water and you slowly heat the frog up, the frog will just boil to death. And so what they're doing right now is going on small scale. Just a little banding over here, a little banding over there, a little banding right there. And then they're going to progressively make it worse, into the point where there's no free speech unless there's free speech if you're on the left, but there will be no free speech for anybody who disagrees with the staff of Facebook. And, well,
no, there's going to be no free speech for anyone who does not bring a large amount of profit to Facebook. Because your clout on Facebook is directly related to how much profit you bring into Facebook. So if you're the kind of guy that drives people away from Facebook, if you're the kind of guy that looks at Facebook's core audience and does things that upsets them, yes, you're going to get removed. Why? Because you are a hazard to Facebook's bottom line. And that's where it ends.
More sites do that, the only answer will be physical violence. So, if you watch what you guys are doing, you guys are making things worse. You guys are creating fascism by doing this. And, well, you're not the heroes you think you are. So anyway, I will leave it at that. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe.
Well, unfortunately, I think that this one has also been removed from his channel. So if you have any additional comments to what he's saying, or even what I'm saying in response to what he's saying, this is where you have to, like or dislike. Comment, say this is great, say this is crap, point out something, hey, maybe I'll actually respond to it if it's good enough. And subscribe, well, I'm going to keep tearing through his videos bit by bit, so we will see. Until then, peace out. As for the rest of chat, guys, I have consumed way too much rum to honestly keep going. I can barely keep my eyes open. So, I don't think we're going to make it to the 4th video tonight, but we still got, well, heck, almost 2 hours, so it's definitely one of the shorter streams. Yeah, Gabriel, what's this guy been talking about? He goes on random tangents. We still haven't gotten to the point in his YouTube career where he started to make actual scripted videos. So, he's flying by the seat of his pants, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants on the seat of his pants, so... It's not the rum, it's Think Before You Sleep that made you sleepy. Maybe. But I'm definitely feeling intoxicated, and I don't think I could get through another one. So, I think we're just going to call it early. And until the next Red Pill Cult meeting, gentlemen, thank you very much for showing up. All 21 of you still in chat, and those of you who've stuck around. We're going to wrap this up, and sometime next week we will keep going as it is, bit by bit. Until then, peace out, Warband, and thank you.